it now, Mom. This land belongs to me. Yours! When have you ever taken care of Mom? Take...
Girls, don't. This land belongs.
Stay out of it, Mom. All of this is mine.
Shut up.
Mom is old. Let her sign it over to me.
In life, money can be lost and earned again. Land can be divided. But parents, you only get one in this lifetime. Don't let anger or ambition make you lose the people who sacrificed their entire lives for you. My dear friend, let your mind be still. Today's story will touch your heart in ways you never expected. Come, listen with me. And tell me, which city and which country are you listening from? Leave your location in the comments below. If you love meaningful, heartfelt stories, please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next episode. When Mama Ronk was young, she was the pride of Ijibu Oat Village. She wasn't glamorous like the city girls, but she had bright eyes, quick hands, and a sharp mind for business. The small cacao farm her parents left behind slowly turned into a brown gold treasure under her care, feeding the entire family. Every harvest season, her yard smelled of sun-dried cacao, dark brown beans spread across the ground like a carpet. People often joked, if Ogun State ever had a cacao queen, it would definitely be Ronk. But the greatest treasure of her life wasn't the land or the cacao. It was her two daughters, Bisi and Tenny. Bisi, the eldest daughter, with the scent of the city. Bisi was the firstborn. Raised during Mama Ronk's hardest years, when every handful of cacao beans had to be sold just to buy books or clothes. She was clever from a young age, quick-tongued, sharp-eyed, always staring at the road that led out of the village. I'm going to Lagos one day. I'm not staying here forever, Mama, Bisi said when she was just 13, her hands still sticky with mud from helping dry cacao. Mama Ronk only smiled, smoothing her daughter's hair. You can go anywhere you want. Just don't forget the way back home. At 19, Bisi really left. She moved to Lagos, worked as a salesgirl, then a receptionist, then slowly climbed into a small real estate company. The city taught her how to speak, how to dress, how to walk on high heels without tripping. But the city also taught her something else. Money is the loudest voice. On her rare visits home, she brought new clothes, new phones, sometimes a little cash. Villagers looked at her with a mix of admiration and distance. Ronk's daughter has become a real Lagos lady. Bisi heard those comments, and slowly a thought formed inside her. This village is too small for me. There's nothing here except that cacao land. She began seeing the land differently, not as memories, not as love, but as value. Tenny, the quiet younger daughter with a heart as sharp as a blade. Tenny was born in better years, when the cacao was yielding richer harvests. She had more schooling, less hardship, and spent more time at home with Mama Ronk in the tin roof house where the smell of cacao became the scent of childhood. She grew up watching her mother work tirelessly every day, morning in the fields, noon drying beans, evening calculating expenses. She would sit on the porch doing homework, glancing at her mother's silhouette between the cacao trees. Whenever a breeze passed through, the leaves shook like waves. When I grow up, I'm staying here with you, Tenny once said. When you get old, I'll take care of you. To outsiders, Tenny was the good daughter. She went to the market for her mom, took her to the clinic, watched the cacao when rain clouds gathered, but deep inside, Tenny carried a quiet wound she tried to ignore. She never made it to Lagos. She had no fancy job, no pretty dresses like her sister. She heard the neighbors praise Bisi. Your first daughter is so successful, earning money in Lagos. Every time she heard that, something tightened in her chest. What about me? I'm the one here every day. I'm the one who stayed with Mama. That hurt didn't explode all at once. It smoldered, glowing like hidden embers under ash. Mama Ronk and the choice nitrogen monoxide Mother wants to make age crept in. Mama Ronk's knees weakened, her back bent like an old cacao branch. She still walked the land, touching each tree that had grown with her. But she knew it was time to think. When I'm gone, who will this belong to? She never said it to her daughters, but on sleepless nights, she listened to the crickets outside and wondered, if I give it to BC, she know how to run it, but she sell it. If I give it to Tenny, she stay, but can she protect it? If I split it, will they hate each other? Her biggest fear wasn't losing the land. It was losing her daughters to greed. She dreamed of a simple future. One day, the two girls would sit together under a cacao tree, fussing about food or clothes. Anything was fine, as long as they were laughing. But life never follows a mother's gentle script. The visits home that hid more than love when rumors spread that Mama Ronk's health was declining. Both daughters suddenly began visiting more often. BC returned with perfume, manicured nails, curled hair, and casually suggested, "Mama, you should stop working. Give me the papers. I'll sell part of the land and buy you a small house in Lagos, close to good hospitals." Mama only smiled, but something inside her shifted. It wasn't that BC didn't love her, but that her love was mixed with strategy. Then when BC left, Tenny would slip into the room and whisper, "Don't trust her, Mama. Lagos changed her. Here, it's just you and me. Give me the papers. I'll protect everything. I'll never leave you." Those sweet, sticky words wrapped around her aging heart like vines, comforting yet suffocating. Soon, most conversations in the house were no longer about meals or sleep, but about documents, signatures, land titles, and inheritance. To the villagers, the daughters visiting meant filial love. To Mama Ronk, it was a daily reminder she was becoming a prize to fight for. The first seed of the coming storm one afternoon, the Ogun sky turned gray. Mama Ronk sat in her old wooden chair, watching the yard. BC was calling from Lagos, speaking urgently about an opportunity that needed land as collateral. Tenny walked out of the kitchen, standing behind her mother silently, her expression darkening. In that single moment, two worlds collided. Bissy's world, city lights, deals, numbers, profit. Tenny's world, village soil, cacao trees, a mother growing old, and Mama Ronk. Trapped in the middle, she let out a quiet sigh, tightening her grip on her shawl. A raindrop hit the tin roof, then another, then another. No one knew that deep inside all three women, a different storm had been building for years. And when it finally broke over Ijibu Ode, it wouldn't just be rain. It would shatter dignity, motherhood, and every belief they had about the meaning of family. And that day was coming very soon. In the beginning, everything seemed beautiful. BC came home from Lagos with her rolling suitcase clacking behind her, bringing candy, perfume, and a few old dresses that still looked new by village standards. Tenny ran all the way to the top of the alley to greet her sister, wearing a smile so bright you wouldn't think a single jealous thought had ever lived inside her. "Mama, look. Your daughter finally looks like a real city woman now." BC laughed, spinning once in her fitted dress. Mama Ronk smiled, tired but warm. Seeing her two daughters sitting together at the same table, eating from the same pot, picking fish meat for their mother, reminiscing about childhood. She thought maybe, just maybe, she had worried too much. "Old age isn't so bad," she murmured to herself. "At least my children have come home." But the ugly things inside a house rarely show themselves in daylight. They wait for the lights to dim, for the night wind to slip through the cracks, for whispers to float in the dark. That night, Ogun skies were dry, but heavy. Mama Ronk lay on her old wooden bed, the thin mattress beneath her molded by years of aching bones. She was drifting off when she heard the living room door creak open. Soft slippers slid across the cement floor. Bissy's voice low and sharp. "What exactly are you planning to do with that land?" A pause. Then Tenny's voice, quiet but pulled tight like a stretched string. "That land should be mine. I'm the one here with Mama. You're never around." Mama Ronk held her breath. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop. But the walls were thinner than banana leaves, and her daughter's words were sharp as knives. "Yours?" BC scoffed. her laugh colder than the night breeze. Did you forget who the firstborn is? Without the money I sent home, this whole house would have collapsed years ago. You sent money, so you could count the land as yours later, right? Tenny's voice was no longer small. Don't pretend to be kind. You didn't come home because of Mama. A chair scraped loudly. Someone had just stood up. What's that supposed to mean? I'm your sister. You're just a stranger who lives in Lagos. Mama Runk shut her eyes. The weak bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered, swaying with each gust of wind. Her heart thumped hard, aching with every exchanged word. She had dreamed of her daughters returning home to laughter. But what filled the air now were the words, mine and yours, the cracks that spread slowly in the days that followed. The rift didn't explode. It expanded softly, silently. Morning meals still had all three of them: warm porridge, braised fish, small talk about Lagos office drama, market gossip, weather changes. But hidden between those ordinary conversations were small knives tucked behind smiles. Do you still remember the neighbor's name, sis? Tenny asked, voice flat. You've been gone too long. Bisi put her spoon down and smirked. What's the point? Once Mama moves to Lagos with me, this village won't matter. Between them, Mama Ronk clenched the edge of the table. She looked at her bowl of porridge, but her mouth tasted bitter like she'd bitten into a chili. In the afternoons, when Tenny helped her out to the porch, she whispered, Mama, Lagos is crowded and dangerous. You're old, something could happen. Here you have me. You have the villagers. It's safer. Another day, when Bisi massaged oil into Mama's aching knee, she murmured, Mama, there's no good hospital in this village. In Lagos, you'll be close to doctors. You only need to sign the land papers. I'll sell a part of it. We'll have money for a nice place. Don't worry about anyone else anymore. Mama Ronk heard everything. Each argument alone sounded reasonable. But together, they turned the house into a cold battlefield, each daughter pulling her to their side. Not for her, but for what lay beneath the soil. Another night, the wind was harsher. Doors rattled against their frames, tapping a steady, uneasy rhythm. Mama Ronk couldn't sleep. The pain in her back forced her to shift constantly, her bones cracking like dry twigs. From the living room, the arguing rose again. Just tell me the truth, Tenny. Where did you take the land title? I'm keeping it. Mama gave it to me. She trusts me more. Trust? Or did you trick her into signing while I was gone? You're barely here. How would you know? Something crashed, glass shattering. Probably the old cup Mama had bought years ago. She pushed herself upright, heart pounding against her ribs like it wanted to escape. She steadied herself and walked toward the door, each step heavier than the last. Through the crack in the half-open door, she saw her daughters, the same girls who once fought to take turns riding on her back, now standing like enemies. Bisi's eyes were red as she pointed at her sister. That land should be mine. I'm the firstborn. I carried this family when Mama was young. Did you forget? Tenny screamed back, clutching her chest as if holding something precious. You visit once a year. I'm the one who washes Mama, cooks for her, takes her to the clinic. If anyone deserves it, it's me. Their voices ricocheted against the walls, slamming into Mama Ronka's ears. She wanted to storm in, to shout, enough! But her voice was nothing but a whisper. The house that pretended everything was fine. The next morning, the sky acted like nothing had happened. Sunlight glowed through the leaves, roosters crowed. Children played somewhere down the road. Inside the house, normal. Bisi woke early to cook breakfast, purposely talking loud. Mama, eat well so you can be strong. Soon you'll come with me to Lagos for a full checkup. Tenny brought a ginger tea, setting it gently on the table. Mama, don't listen to her. Stay here. I'll care for you. Money doesn't matter. What matters is being with someone who truly loves you. Her words echoed the same phrase Mama had repeated all her life. Money doesn't matter as long as my daughters love each other. But this time, hearing it from her daughter made her shiver. because she knew it was no longer a reminder. It had become a weapon. She looked from BC to Tenny, two faces that resembled her so painfully, same eyes, same frown, same stubborn jawline, yet standing on opposite sides of the battlefield. In that moment, Mama Ronk realized a brutal truth. Love still existed in this house, but it was no longer whole. It had been chipped away, bit by jealousy, resentment, and tiny venom-tipped remarks. You have a big house and a fancy car. Why fight with me? You depend on Mama your whole life. Who are you to lecture me? Who does Mama love more? Who actually deserves the land? Every sentence was like a small blade slicing a sheet of paper, the paper called family. 1 cut, 2 cuts, 10 cuts. Until even Mama Ronk wasn't sure that paper could hold its shape anymore. When the light goes out, truth comes in one evening. The electricity went out. The whole village sank into darkness, lit only by moonlight behind the trees. The three of them sat in the living room with a single candle flickering. Candlelight softened everyone's face, made them look gentle again. Hope fluttered in Mama Ronk's chest. In the shifting glow, she tried once more. Money doesn't matter as long as you still love each other. She looked at each daughter, praying for an answer. BC lowered her head, silent. Tenny twisted her bracelet, saying nothing. No one disagreed. But no one truly believed, either. Somewhere inside each of them, another voice whispered, "Love is good. But who gets the land?" And right then, Mama Ronk finally understood. Love in this house didn't die in a single day. It had been eaten away long ago, like termites chewing through a pillar, waiting for just one strong gust of wind to bring the whole roof crashing down. That morning, the Ogun sky was strangely blue. A pure, spotless blue one that made people believe nothing bad could ever happen beneath it. The wind swept through the cacao trees, the leaves whispering like someone murmuring secrets. Mama Ronk wrapped her old shawl around herself, leaning on Tenny's shoulder as they walked slowly down the dirt road leading to the Balwu, the village chief of Ijibu Ode. "Slowly, Mama," Tenny said softly, her voice sweet as ever. "We're just doing this to keep things clear. You're not well. Better to settle everything now before things get messy." Mama Ronk nodded weakly. She wasn't sure she was doing the right thing. But after so many sleepless nights, so many coughing spells, so many moments when Tenny carefully wiped her back or washed her feet, she finally gave in. If I put her name on the land title, maybe she'll stop worrying, she told herself. And BC. She has her own life in Lagos now. She understand. She wanted to believe that. The village chief's house sat on a slight hill, its old tiled roof covered in moss. A large tamarind tree stood at the entrance, its branches having witnessed generations of arguments, weddings, inheritance fights, and reconciliations. Chief Edikuna welcomed them inside with a heavy expression. "Ronk, have you really thought this through? Changing the land title is no small matter." Mama Ronk forced a tired smile, her voice hoarse. "My girls, they will leave me eventually. I just want to know, before I die, that I've handed the land to someone who won't let it rot." Tenny sat beside her, eyes glistening, gripping her mother's hand as if letting go would make her vanish. "I only want to protect your land, Mama," she whispered. The chief pulled out the documents, the ink, the village stamp. He looked at Tenny, then at her mother. "All right, but remember what you signed today. Cannot be undone easily." Mama Ronk didn't look at the papers. She looked at her own hands, the hands that planted baby cacao trees, carried baskets of beans, held her daughters through hunger and sickness. Thin fingers, veins crawling under the skin like roots of an old tree. Is this really what's best for them? A tiny voice echoed inside her head. But in front of her, Tenny pushed the papers gently toward her, her tone honey-sweet. "It's just your signature, Mama. My name. Is your name too? People say sins don't begin with knives. They begin with words that sound reasonable." The chief handed her the pen. Mama Ronk signed. the red stamp pressed down, round deep, like a bloodstain on white paper. At that very moment, on the road from the bus station, a bus from Lagos screeched to a stop in the red afternoon dust. Bisi stepped down. She hadn't planned to come home today. But that morning, she received a message that shattered her calm. Heard your mom and Tenny went to the chief's house early today. Something about the land, a childhood friend wrote. Her heartbeat quickened. She wouldn't dare go behind my back, would she? She clenched her jaw, shoved her phone deep into her purse, and took the earliest bus home. The familiar trees, cacao fields, rooster calls. Everything blurred past her like a fast-forwarded film. In her mind, there was only one image. Tenny sitting beside their mother, pushing papers toward her. Not a chance, Bisi muttered. Not after everything I've done. When Bisi reached the house, it was empty. The door was unlocked. The wooden chair where her mother usually sat was vacant. On the table lay a faint purple smear of ink, and a handkerchief stained with a round blot of ink. A thumbprint. Whose thumb? Bisi didn't need to ask. Her blood boiled. She bolted outside, grabbing a child playing nearby. Did you see my mother or my sister? Where did they go? The child pointed toward the chief's house. The storm breaks. The chief's yard was quiet. Mama Rock had just stepped out, her hand trembling from pressing her thumb onto the document. Tenny walked beside her, clutching the folder of papers tightly against her chest like treasure. I'll keep everything safe, Mama, Tenny said. From now on, no one can take anything from you. Tenny! Mama Rock nodded faintly, her cloudy eyes confused. She no longer had the strength to tell which words were protection and which were possession. At her age, sometimes all it takes is the child who stands closest to you for your heart to believe. Suddenly, fast footsteps pounded on the dirt road. Tenny! The shout cracked through the air like thunder. Both women turned. Bisi stood at the gate, hair disheveled, pants covered in red dust, eyes blazing. She knows, a weary corner of Mama Ronk's soul whispered. Bisi stormed into the yard without greeting anyone, her eyes locked onto the folder in Tenny's hands. You went behind my back? Her voice was raw from running, but each word slammed out like a stone. Tenny flinched for a second, then lifted her chin, smirking. If you cared about Mama half as much as you care about money, we wouldn't be here. The sentence dropped like a match onto dry leaves. All the resentment, jealousy, hurt, and bitterness finally ignited. Money? Bisi growled, stepping forward. You steal the land papers behind my back and I didn't steal anything. Tenny straightened, clutching the documents tighter. Mama signed them. Mama chose me. You were too busy being a city woman. Mama only has me here. Mama Ronk stood frozen between them, like someone caught in the middle of two rising floods. She reached out with trembling hands. Girls, please, let's go home and talk. But neither daughter heard her. The chief stepped closer, about to speak, then stopped. He knew there were conflicts a community could settle, and some it could only witness. Bisi grabbed the edge of the folder and yanked hard. Give it here. You don't deserve this. This land is Mama's sweat, not yours. Tenny pulled back, her nails digging into the paper. Oh, really? You think you deserve it? You send a few Lagos dollars home, and suddenly you're the savior? When Mama was sick, where were you? When Mama cried, where were you? When Mama fell in the garden, who lifted her up? Her words hit Bisi like arrows straight into her deepest wound. Yes, she had been gone too long. Yes, she missed calls. Yes, Mama always said, don't worry, I'm fine. But hearing it from Tenny's mouth made it feel like a public accusation. Shut up, Bisi screamed, pulling harder. A corner of the document tore. The sound of ripping paper sliced through the yard, sharp, high, like the cry of a bird with its wing torn. Mama Ronk lunged forward, pure mother's instinct overriding old age. Stop, give it to me. This is mine. Before she could touch it, Both girls yanked the papers in opposite directions. Tenny stumbled backward. BC lunged forward. Bissie's hand shoved into her mother's shoulder. Everything slowed, like a movie. Mama Ronk swayed. Her eyes widened, not in pain, but in horror. Her foot slipped on the stone patio. Her back folded, her head tilting dangerously. Tenny dropped the papers, reaching out. "Mama!" But it was too late. Her head struck the stone beside the water jar. The sound, thud, small, but enough to crush every heart in the yard. For 1 second, no one breathed. Then, the blood came. A thin red line from her forehead, then thicker, coursing down her wrinkles, dropping onto the cement. The land papers scattered around her like dead leaves on cold ground. Then came the scream that shredded the air. Blood! Oh God, blood! A woman passing by dropped her basket, hands to her mouth. Her shout ripped through the village, pulling people out of their homes, their farms, their conversations. What happened? Did someone fall? Dear Lord, is that Mama Ronk? An old woman staggered forward, nearly dropping her tray. Jesus! The daughters fought over land, and ended up hurting their own mother? In the yard, BC stood frozen, staring at the widening pool of blood. Did I push her? No, I didn't mean to. I was just angry at Tenny. I didn't. Her legs buckled. Voices around her blurred into distant echoes, hollow and far away. Tenny collapsed beside her mother, trembling hands touching her cheek. Mama, Mama, please, open your eyes. I didn't want. I didn't mean. I only wanted to protect the land. Why did it end like this? Blood soaked into Tenny's dress, spreading like a stain that would never wash away. The chief finally rushed over, kneeling down. Get her inside. Someone call help. Get a cart. Take her to the clinic. But before anyone could lift her, Mama Ronk's eyes fluttered open. Clouded, weak, but still able to see the two terrified faces of her daughters. For one tiny, fragile moment, she raised her bloodied hand, trying to touch both of them. Not to accuse, not to choose sides, not to punish, but as if to say, I lost you long before I fell. Her hand dropped, useless. Villagers crowded the gate, their cries, prayers, and gasps mixing in a loud, trembling storm. On the stone floor, surrounded by blood-stained land papers, the quiet feud that began in whispered nighttime arguments had exploded into a public tragedy. A man in the crowd shook his head and murmured, they thought they were fighting for land. But they just destroyed the most precious thing they ever had. Rumors that Mama Ronk had been slapped by her own daughter spread faster than the wind. Within minutes, the village chief's yard was packed. People from the far end of the village, from tiny alleys, from the market, from the fields, dropped everything and rushed over. Everyone had heard a different version of the story, but one detail never changed. She slapped her mother, right in the yard. Over some land papers, village chief Adakunal stepped out of his house, Booba neatly arranged, but his face had none of its usual calm. He was used to settling land disputes, marital fights, neighbor complaints. But this was a first. In front of him was a scene no one ever wanted to witness. Mama Ronk being helped out of the yard, half conscious, the blood streak on her forehead spreading into a strange shape. BC kneeling beside her, face pale like half her soul had already left. Tenny standing frozen like stone, her hand still trembling. Her eyes locked on the palm that had just slapped her mother, the hand that hadn't even finished its arc before it turned her entire life into a stain. Whispers rippled through the crowd. This house has been stained by money. In the old days, a child just raising their voice at a parent was enough for the chief to step in. But slapping your own mother in front of everyone, this can't be ignored. An elderly man with a cane walked to the front. His eyes were cloudy with age, but his voice rang clear. Fighting over land was already shameful enough, but laying hands on your own mother? This has never happened in Ogun State. The words sounded like a drum calling people to attention. It was no longer a private family issue. it had become the village's business. "Hold 'em," a young man shouted. The village boys, the same young men who usually joked around, played football, flirted with girls, were not laughing today. They stepped forward, not violently, but firmly. "Bisi, stand up. Tenny, come here." Bisi looked up, eyes swollen and red. "Please, don't tie me. I need to go with my mother. I can't leave her." A hand rested on her shoulder. "Chief Adiconals, if you truly care about your mother, then right now you must answer for what you and your sister have done. This is not the jungle. Ogun State has laws. And this village has its honor." Tenny couldn't manage a single word. She let them lead her away, her feet barely feeling the ground. In her mind, there were only two images: her mother's cheek, burning red after the slap, and the villagers' eyes looking at her as if she were something no longer human. In the center of the village square, where people held meetings, danced, sang, and celebrated festivals, two large wooden posts had stood for generations. In the past, they were used to tie goats and cows, and sometimes petty thieves for the village to see. Today, for the first time, two daughters were brought there. Rope was wrapped around their wrists and tied to the posts. Not tight enough to wound them, but tight enough to send a message. From today onward, this is no longer a secret hidden in a single house. This was something the entire community would remember. The village women gathered in a group opposite the sisters. They were women who had carried children, given birth, and raised them with milk and tears. So when they looked at Bisi and Tenny, their eyes weren't just filled with anger, but with a kind of pain they didn't know how to name. "When you were little," one woman spoke, "every time you fell, your mother was the first to run over and pick you up. And now your mother falls, and it's your own hands that made her fall." Another woman shook her head. "They say daughters are closest to their mothers. But seeing you two today, I'm scared for myself. When I grow weak, what will my child do to me?" Those words weren't knives, but they pierced deeper than any blade. Tenny swallowed hard, her throat dry and burning. Bisi lowered her head, her tears dripping onto the Ogun red dust. Meanwhile, Mama Ronk had been brought to the village clinic, a simple concrete building, but clean and orderly inside. The old nurse, Madame Dupe, was used to treating injuries from falls, farming accidents, and knife slips. She was not used to treating wounds caused by a child's hand. She rinsed away the blood and gently cleaned the cut on Mama Ronk's forehead. The noise from the village square roared outside like waves, but inside the small room, there was only the soft sound of gauze on skin and the shallow, uneven breathing of a broken mother. "Ronk, stay still," Madame Dupe said gently. "Don't try to talk too much. Let me bandage this. Then we'll send you to the district hospital." Mama Ronk opened her eyes. The skin around them was swollen. Her cheek was still red, bearing the blurred imprint of a hand, undeniable proof of a child's slap. But in her eyes, there was no anger, no cursing, no words of hatred for her daughters. Only a sadness as deep as the village well. "Where are they?" she asked quietly. "They're in the square," Madame Dupe sighed. "The chief is holding them there for judgment. The whole village is furious." Mama Ronk turned her face slightly. She stared at the small window where Ogun sunlight still shone in as if nothing had happened. She remembered the day Bisi took her first steps and fell flat, blood trickling from her lip. She remembered Tenny as a child, fighting the neighbor kids because they called her Mom, the old cacao woman. Back then, her child hit others to defend her mother. Today, her child hit her to defend a piece of land. Life really had a cruel sense of humor. Madame Dupe asked softly, "Do you want to report this to the district police? This can't be taken lightly. The Elderly Protection Act is strict now. Children who abuse their parents can be taken to court, even jailed. Do you understand?" Mama Ronk was silent. Outside, the sound of a child crying after being scolded drifted in. A chicken clucked. A motorbike drove past. The world kept moving forward, even as a mother's heart was collapsing. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice thin as wind blowing across a dry field. I raised my children with love. So why do they repay me with their fists? Madame Duke froze. The bandage in her hand paused mid-her. The sentence wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, but it went straight through the clinic walls, straight into the village square, where a few people standing near the window heard it, then repeated it to those further out. Within moments, the words spread through the square, then across the village like fire racing through dry grass. She said, I raised my children with love, so why do they repay me with their fists? A young woman holding her baby to her chest heard it and burst into tears. A boy standing near the posts where the sisters were tied suddenly felt a cold chill down his spine. The chief heard it too. He raised his head and looked at the two girls standing with their hands bound, faces lowered. Did you hear what your mother said? He asked. Bisi choked on a sob. Tenny squeezed her eyes shut, tears spilling over, dripping onto her tied hands. She wanted to cover her ears, to shut it out, but the rope forced her to stand there and listen to every word. I raised my children with love. So why do they repay me with their fists? It wasn't just a question for Bisi and Tenny. It was a question for an entire generation, slowly forgetting the value of a home, of gray hair, of wrinkled hands that once shielded them from life's storms. By late afternoon, the Ogun sun began to lean toward the west. The square was still crowded, but no longer loud. After an explosion of anger, something else often followed, reflection. A woman whispered, maybe we need to look at how we treat our own parents. We might not slap them, but we ignore them. The person beside her nodded. Things like this don't happen in one day. They start with sharp replies, with forgetting to check in, with letting our parents eat alone. The chief looked around. He knew now that whatever punishment he gave these two girls, tying them to posts, weeks of community labor, would never be their true sentence. Their real punishment had already begun the moment Tenny's palm touched her mother's face. A stain like that is almost impossible to wash away in one lifetime. In the clinic, Mama Ronk slowly closed her eyes. The pain medication was beginning to work, blurring everything outside like a TV screen, fading into the distance. But the sentence she'd spoken, she did not take it back. I raised my children with love, so why do they repay me with their fists? It wasn't a curse. It wasn't revenge. It was an alarm, a warning for anyone who takes a mother's embrace for granted, who shrugs off simple meals, who ignores the bent back of a father still waiting for them to return home. Somewhere in the vast stretch of Ogun State, this story had already outgrown a single yard, a single family, and become a mirror held up to countless other homes. And that evening, as the sun went down, the shadows cast across the ground were not just from the tamarind tree and the village posts. They were also from the two daughters with bound hands, long twisted shadows stretching across the silent wall of everyone's conscience. That afternoon, the Ogun sun hung low over the tin rooftops, its golden light stained with the colors of dust and blood. The village square, once a place for festivals, weddings, and drum dances, had transformed into a courtroom with no walls, no roof, only the light of the sky and the eyes of the people. In the center stood two old wooden pillars. Bisi and Tenny leaned against them, the ropes gone but red marks still circling their wrists, scars from a morning that felt as long as a lifetime. They no longer argued, no longer tugged at papers, no longer shouted. Their silence was louder than any battle. On a tall wooden chair placed in the middle of the square, Chief Adekunle sat upright. To his right stood the women's council, faces hardened by sun and life, yet strong with the fierce resilience of mothers who had weathered storms inside their own homes. To his left, the village youth, boys and girls, watched the sisters with a mixture of shock, anger, and fear. In front of them stood the village pastor in a plain white robe, holding a Bible worn at the edges. He hadn't come to condemn, but he hadn't come to offer cheap forgiveness either. He came to witness. When the last murmur died down, the chief slowly stood. "Today," he began, voice heavy and deep, "we are not gathered here because of land or documents. We are here for something weightier than any property, a mother who has been hurt by her own children." He scanned the crowd, making sure every face, every pair of eyes was truly listening. "We are not the courts of the government. But since the day our ancestors built this village, this square has been the place where right and wrong are separated. If we stay silent today, tomorrow our children will think slapping a parent over property is normal." The murmurs faded. No one wanted their village to become the birthplace of such a normal. The chief turned to the sisters. "Bisi, Tenny, do either of you have something to say before the village announces its judgment?" Bisi looked up. Her eyes, once bright when she spoke of legas, of business deals, of contracts, were now clouded like a stormy sky. She took a shaky breath, her voice coarse. I have nothing to defend myself with. I was angry. I was selfish. I thought of my contribution and forgot the countless things my mother gave me first. I didn't mean to push her, but..." Her voice cracked. The word "but" hung in the air, then collapsed under its own weight. Bisi shook her head, tears spilling. "Actually, there's no but. I was wrong." The chief let the silence settle before turning to Tenny. "And you?" Tenny stood motionless for a long time. Her eyes were swollen, her hair messy, her clothes still stained with her mother's blood. She opened her mouth. No sound came out. She tried again. Her voice trembled like an over-tightened string. I always thought I loved Mama the most. I stayed with her every day. I took her to the doctor. I cooked her meals." She swallowed hard. "I thought, because I stayed by her side, I deserved more. I let my hurt become an excuse to grab and fight. I let my hand touch my mother's face in a way it never should have." A tear fell to the ground. "I thought I was protecting Mama and the land, but really, I was only protecting my pride." The square fell silent. The Women's Council whispered among themselves. Then one stood, the Eolode, the very woman who had recorded the incident earlier. "Chief," she said, "we cannot ignore this. If we do, tomorrow more mothers will be neglected, hit, and forgotten." She paused, turning to the sisters, her eyes moist. "But they are still someone's daughters. We punish them. But we must not turn them into animals. We punish so they can change, not so they die inside." The pastor nodded softly. "Punishment is needed, but so is the chance to face the consequences with honesty." The chief sat again and began writing on a sheet of paper placed on the rattan table. His hand moved slowly, deliberately, each stroke heavy, as if every word weighed as much as a stone. And each stone, once placed, would pave the path for future cases. Finally, he stood and read the verdict aloud. After discussion with the Women's Council, the elders, the youth, and the pastor. The mention of the pastor made several villagers lift their heads, meaning both community and faith stood together in this judgment. The village of Ijibu Ode issues the following ruling for Bisi and Tenny, daughters of Mama Runk. First, for 60 days from today, the two of you will perform community service, rotating in the care of the elderly in our village, washing, cleaning, cooking, escorting them to the clinic. You will receive no payment. This is punishment, and a lesson in what aging truly feels like. A quiet ripple passed through the crowd. They understood the chief's intent. If the sisters did not grasp the pain of an elderly mother, then let them spend 60 days hearing the loneliness of others, hearing stories of neglect, abandonment, and being treated as burdens. Second, the chief continued, for 3 years from today, the two of you are forbidden from touching any property under your mother's name. You may not sell, transfer, or file any document related to her cacao land. A young man nodded. 3 years. Enough to see if they change or pretend. Third, the chief inhaled deeply. Before the entire village gathered here today, both of you must publicly apologize to your mother for your act of disrespect, not a shallow apology. but one from the heart. He lowered the paper, his old but sharp eyes sweeping across the square. This is not merely punishment. This is a reminder to all of us. Whoever forgets their parents forgets the root of their very existence. The air thickened. The chief turned to the sisters. Softer now. It's time. A young man rushed to the clinic and soon returned with a wheelchair. Mama Rock seated in it, her head wrapped in white bandages, her cheek still bruised, but her eyes clearer now. The villagers parted silently, forming a path. The wheelchair rolled forward, the wheels clicking over the tiles. Mama Ronk was brought face to face with her daughters. No land papers between them anymore. Only a space filled with things that couldn't be weighed or measured. Love, betrayal, pain, a faint hope. The chief's voice dropped. Now. Kneel. No one helped, no one pushed. Bisi looked at her mother. Tenny looked at her mother. In that moment, all excuses, all arguments, all because, and therefore, melted like sand washed by waves. Only one truth remained. They had made their mother bleed. The sisters knelt together, their knees touching the same red earth where their mother's head had struck earlier. This time, they knelt not because they were forced, but because they could no longer stand under their mother's gaze. Now, the chief said, say the words you should have said long ago. No script, no rehearsed lines. For the first time in their lives, Bisi and Tenny had to find words meant not for negotiations or quarrels, but for the woman who first called them my daughters. Bisi spoke first, her voice cracking like broken glass. Mama, she swallowed hard. Mama, we were wrong. Tenny repeated like a quiet prayer. Mama, we were wrong. I had no right to ever raise my hand at you. No matter how many years I stayed by your side. That never gave me that right. A sob broke from somewhere behind them. No one knew who it belonged to, a child, a woman, a man. But once the first tear fell, others followed. Mama Ronk looked at her daughters kneeling before her. If this were a movie, perhaps the director would make her scream, curse them, disown them, declare their relationship finished. But real life is different. Real life is a mother who, even when betrayed, cannot stop loving. She inhaled slowly, though her chest ached. My children. She began, voice weak but clear. You may lose land, you may lose money. You may lose the house. All of those. God gives, God takes. She paused, looking directly into their eyes. But do not lose yourselves. The square fell silent. As long as you chase property more than you chase your mother, she said, then you are no longer the Bisi and Tenny I raised. You become strangers wearing the faces I once loved. Bisi clenched her hands, tears falling on palms scarred by years of keyboards and city rush. Tenny bit her lip until it bled. I don't want to be a stranger, Bisi whispered. Neither do I, Tenny said. I want to be your daughter again. Not the girl who slapped you. Mama Ronk lifted her bandaged hand. It trembled, but she reached out just as she had done when they were little and touched each of their heads gently. Then from today, she said softly, use the same hands that hurt me to care for other elders. Let your hands grow calloused from work. Not ambition, the pastor nodded. The chief nodded. The sentence was given, not with a gavel, but with the trembling voice of a mother. As the sun dipped behind the distant trees, the shadows of the village posts stretched long across the ground covering the two kneeling figures. Somewhere in Ogun State, people would hear this story through phone calls, through the video the earlobe recorded, through retellings. They would shake their heads and say, how can children hit their mother over land? But in the village square that evening, everyone understood. No evil appears in a single day. It begins when we allow material things to stand between us and the people who brought us into this world. And sometimes it takes an entire community standing together for one family to find its way back home. Evening settled over Ijibu Ode. The last light of the day lay over the cacao grove, over the tin roof of Mama Ronk's house. Over the village square, where just hours earlier there had been shouting, fighting, and choked sobs. A soft wind blew, carrying the smell of earth, of sun, of past harvests. But today, the wind carried a lesson too. Mama Ronk was brought home in an old wooden wheelchair. Bisi walked on her left, one hand steadying her mother's shoulder. Tenny walked on her right, lifting the wheel slightly to avoid potholes in the dirt road. The two sisters said nothing. They didn't dare look at each other. They focused only on their mother's every fragile movement. Everyone they passed bowed their heads respectfully to Mama Ronk. But the way they looked at Bisi and Tenny was different. No longer angry, no longer condemning, but with something deeper, a quiet reminder. Remember who you are. And remember who made you who you are. Inside the small house, Mama Ronk lay on her familiar bamboo bed. The evening light slid in through the window, falling across her tired but gentle face. Her eyes were still weary, still blurred, but her voice was clearer than it had been that morning. "Sit down," she said. The sisters sat by the bed, their heads bowed like two children caught misbehaving. Mama Ronk reached out, that trembling hand, rough and darkened by years of tending cacao, and placed it on each of their hands. "I don't need land," she said quietly. "I don't need my name on any papers." Both daughters looked up, eyes swollen and red. "I only need you," she went on. "I just need to know that even when I'm gone, you'll still be holding each other's hands." She looked at them for a long, long time, as if trying to carve their faces into her heart, in case time didn't allow her to see them again. "You can divide the land," she said. "Divide the money, divide the house. But don't divide your sisterhood." A tear slipped from the corner of her eye, the tear of a lifetime of motherhood, sacrifice, and hope. Of believing that love can heal what ambition has broken. Outside, the sun sank lower, shadows stretched long over the red earth. The village gathering had ended. But the lesson from the square would live on, told at dinner tables, in women's meetings, in the pastor's Sunday sermons. Children in the village would hear the story from their parents. Never let land make you forget the one who gave you life. The young people would remember the sight of two sisters tied to the village posts, not to humiliate them, but to remind everyone that disrespect toward parents is never just a private matter. And the elders, they would remember Mama Ronk's words, "I raised my children with love. So why do they repay me with their fists?" When night finally fell, the two sisters sat together on the front porch. No more arguments. No more battles over who was right or who deserved more. They just sat, two daughters trying to find again what had been lost somewhere between the shouting and the ripped papers. Softly, Bisi said, "Hey, I'm sorry." Just as softly, Tenny replied, "I'm sorry too." Big sister. Nothing more needed to be said. Reconciliation sometimes comes through words, sometimes through silence, but what matters is that it comes. That night, Ijibu Ode was peaceful again. The cacao trees still stood. The land was still there. Papers could be signed, changed, erased, redrawn. But there is one thing. That, once lost, no contract can restore, no money can buy back, no time can replace. A mother. Property can be divided, and the more you divide it, the less there is. But a mother, there is only one. And whoever loses their mother has already lost the most precious part of their own life. Before you leave this video, tell me, which city and which country are you watching from? Lagos? Nairobi? Accra? Johannesburg? New York? London? Or a peaceful little corner of the world only you know? Drop your location in the comments so African Tales by TTL can see where our stories are touching hearts across the globe. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in family, in kindness, in the lessons life teaches us, please hit subscribe, tap the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Every week, we bring you stories that are deeply emotional, real and relatable, filled with powerful life lessons, rich with African culture and values, just one click. but it gives us the strength to create even more meaningful stories for you. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. Thank you for believing in the beauty of family and compassion. Thank you, because every view, every comment, every share helps African Tales by TTL continue this meaningful journey of storytelling. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. See you in the next story.